Hello, everyone. Good morning, or good afternoon. We're right at that cusp of getting to the afternoon, but welcome here to Space as a Route to Net Zero conversation. We have excellent panelists that will enlighten us with what's coming up and how space can be part of helping us achieve net zero goals that we have. His Excellency Hamza Youssef, First Minister of Scotland, thank you for joining us and for this conversation. Looking forward to hearing your remarks. But before we get started, I would love to start by sharing a video that we have about the amazing work that Scotland is doing in the area of space technologies. So would you please play the video?
When you think Scotland, do you think space? Think again. Think Scotland. Think space. Think loads of space just by the sea, perfect for launching rockets. Think the first orbital launch site in Europe. Now, think lower operating costs. Think 40% lower. Then think launching your new base right here in a ready-built, highly connected network of academics, graduates, innovators, and some of the best space tech minds in Europe. Then watch your business
3, 2, 1.
skyrocket. Think of a country that's no stranger to pioneering innovation and inventions. Inventions known the world over. Do any of these ring a bell? Think satellites. Think Scotland, producing more small satellites than anywhere else in Europe. Think life on Mars would be a wonderful thing? Sure. But life right here in Scotland can be pretty amazing too. Think of a quality and cost of living that is out of this world. Think talent, think expertise, think end to end. Think funding, connections and expert support, all to help your business take off. And if all that didn't compute, then our data will. Think big data, helping create solutions all over the world, helping look after our own planet. So yeah, when it comes to space, think big opportunities, bigger, much bigger, vastly bigger. Think different, think Scotland.
Fantastic video. So my name is Anusha Ansari. I'm CEO of XPRIZE Foundation. And I actually am excited because we're going to have our first EU hub at University of Glasgow in Scotland. And I didn't see this video. I would have been there sooner. But it's amazing, the space industry. I'm a space geek myself. That's how I got my start with the nonprofit organization XPRIZE Foundation. We are a 29-year-old nonprofit, and we got our start by trying to launch commercial space program back in the late 1980s, where there was no SpaceX or Blue Origin or this thriving economy around commercial space programs. We believe that that could be not only a great business opportunity, but a great opportunity for people here on Earth. We're not only after exploration, we see space as a means of helping us live better lives, create a better future for humanity here. And our vision was to, by lowering costs of access to space, we can really open up the door for business opportunities and industries to be created around commercial space. And that's why we launched the competition. It was very successful. It created new policies that allowed for commercial space programs to exist. And it gave me an opportunity to go to the International Space Station and see our beautiful planet from up there, and give me even a much deeper appreciation for how important it is for us to really preserve this only home we have. I love to travel to Mars and other planets, but nothing looks like our own planet here. So we need to do our best to make sure we preserve our resources and create a sustainable way of life for ourselves. And that's why we have this panel to talk about how space can help us get started on that path. We have excellent panelists that I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. We have Daniel Smith, founder of Astro Agency, Phil McCallan, CEO and co-founder of DCAT, Anna Hazlitt, CEO of Azure X, and Alan Cannon, CEO and co-founder of Crucial. So would you guys maybe get us started by talking a little bit about your work, your programs, and yourselves?
Sure, I can start. So I'm Daniel Smith. I'm the founder of Astro Agency, which is a strategic communications company focused solely on the space sector and helping companies that aren't yet in the sector to move into the industry. We work with around 50 companies around the world, 50 space companies. Many of them, sorry, they can't hear me. Many of them are working on sustainability initiatives, so the likes of ClearSpace and Astroscale, who work on active debris removal from orbit with the UK Space Agency. We work with space situational awareness companies who track micro debris in orbit and help us to warn satellite operators if there might be a collision upcoming. We work with rocket manufacturers who are working on greener propellants and fuels, spaceports who are developing low carbon infrastructure as part of their environmental impact assessments. And indeed, most importantly of all, we're supporting a number of space data companies, and that's what all of the other stuff enables ultimately, is bringing that data back down to Earth. We work with 7 governments as well, 4 national space agencies, and we're just working on a project just now with here in the region with the MBRSC and also Bahrain and Oman with AzureX. Anna will talk more about that. About a year ago, we launched the world's first space sustainability roadmap that we delivered with our partners. And it was the first time a space strategy had ever been written for a country's space sector, and that country was Scotland. So we're really proud of that. I'm also here representing Space Scotland, which is a not-for-profit industry body set up to support space companies to grow, around 150 space companies in Scotland. And that's me, and happy National Day to those of you from the UAE.
First Minister, ladies and gentlemen. Phil McLachlan, CEO and co-founder of DCAT. We're a data services company. So we're one of those companies that's building those new data products out of the satellite remote sensing data. I want to make a point of why we're located in Scotland. We positioned as a technology company in Scotland to be very, very close to world-renowned centres of expertise in spectral science, which gives us access to the type of people that we recruit to start building our services out of the fantastic new data sets that are coming down from space. A couple of examples of clients that we work with and projects that we do. We work with Veolia. We started working with them 3 years ago to build satellite remote sensing services to help them with the operations side of the business. That's moved into the methane pledge, where they're looking to reduce their methane emissions by 30% by 2030 and eradicate them by 2050. And we're doing that by with a project at the moment that's looking at landfill sites and the methane emissions from landfill, and how you can begin to use the different types of methane data sets that are coming down from space to be able to do this affordably. And I think that's one of the key themes that's coming out. Another example of what we do, we work with one of the world's largest international food companies who are looking at creating both robust and scalable monitoring of soil carbon and greenhouse gas emissions from crops, from different crops. These products take a lot of time to develop, and there's a lot of R&D that goes into it, and hence one of the reasons that we're in Scotland.
Working? Yep. Hi, everyone. My name's Anna Hazlitt. I'm the founder and principal of AzureX. We're based here in the UAE. I've been here for 9 years, and over the last, I would say, 6 years, we've been very focused on the space sector. Our work primarily is in professional services. So we work with the private space sector as well as the national space agencies of the region. We're, I would say, quite strong at helping companies, from Scotland and elsewhere globally to internationalize and really come to the region. So we really support their efforts in building, relationships and their respective products and services across the space value chain here. We're working on a very interesting project involved with what we call Space for Earth. So how we, utilize Earth observation and the impact that Earth observation has across industries. This has been supported by the UK Space Agency, International Bilateral Fund, working closely with Astra Agency, the Space Centre in Dubai, the National Space Centre in Bahrain, and also Oman and a few other strategic partners. We really see the way that Scotland's come over the years in terms of its growth of the space industry. There's some interesting parallels with the growth that we're seeing here in the UAE and other space markets here. So I think through forums like this and others, in terms of sharing knowledge and really creating dialogue is how we're going to really collaborate, when it comes to how space can contribute to net zero. So we're happy to be part of this conversation and here to support all the companies, coming here in their international roadmap.
Thanks, Anna. First Minister. Alan Cannon, I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Crucial. Crucial exists to help organizations digitally transform, specifically organizations that have distributed assets. So think energy companies, transport networks, organizations that really struggle to collect data from those assets and move those data back to the cloud so that we can derive value and help them increase their performance, but more importantly, become more sustainable. I started the business 5.5 years ago. Prior to that, I worked upstream in the space industry, and we'll talk a lot about upstream aspects of the Scottish ecosystem. But I worked with a company called Clyde Space, who were throwing up small satellites about the size of a whiskey box. I worked with organizations such as NASA, European Space Agency, primarily on Earth observation missions, sensing the world. We worked on a specific project which looked at the ocean color and the change of ocean colors to detect algal blooms. Fantastic project to work on. We worked on a project which was sensing the ozone layer for the European Space Agency and changes to the ozone layer, which was fantastic. So I'm really here today to hopefully talk about the upstream aspect and my experience with the upstream aspect of the Scottish ecosystem, and what that enables. But primarily with my business, Crucial, how we can enable an acceleration of our route to net zero, essentially. So, thank you.
Thank you. So First Minister, you must be proud of hearing about all these amazing space companies homed in Scotland. Tell us in your words, what is the strength of Scotland's space sector? What do you see the strength and the advantage?
First and foremost, can I say how delighted I am that we've brought together such an excellent panel. All of the people in this panel I admire greatly for the excellent work that they're doing. I'm really pleased that you're moderating for us. Thank you so much, because I admire you and the achievements you've had, and I think they should be recognized in terms of, I think the first woman of Muslim descent and also Iranian background to be in space. That's worthy of a round of applause, I think, to go into space. So well done for your own, and we're delighted that Glasgow University, and I might be a bit biased because I was a student of Glasgow University, will be hosting Europe's first X Hub. So we're delighted by that. For me, first and foremost, let me say that Scotland, as that video demonstrated, often we talk about ourselves, rightly, as a land of innovation and invention. And sometimes we fall into a trap where we talk about the innovations and inventions of the past, and they're important: telephone, television, penicillin, MRI scanner, and so on and so forth. But actually the innovation and ingenuity that is happening right now, for me, is hugely exciting. Because gatherings like COP, and people can be dismissive of COP, I'm certainly not. The value of COP is that it's a gathering of people coming together to use humanity's collective ingenuity, intellect, innovation to try to solve some of the world's biggest problems. And in the case of climate change, of course, the biggest existential threat we face. And in Scotland, and to answer your question now directly, in Scotland, the benefit of the space sector, I was just talking with a couple of colleagues on this panel about this recently, is in that end-to-end system. So that's what we have in Scotland. And you heard that just from actually the panel that you have here, that we don't just do one component part of the space industry. We've got the ability, we're working on it, but certainly to have the entire ecosystem there in Scotland. I think what we have to do more of, not just invest, not just support the businesses to come to Scotland, further join up that ecosystem, but also what we have to do is sell the story a lot better. I say this as the First Minister of Scotland. There's a better awareness of the space sector in Scotland, but what we have to do is make sure people understand how crucial it is to tackling climate change. And I was reminded by one of my colleagues, it was in the 1980s, the discovery of the ozone layer, and the hole in the ozone layer, of course, was by a NASA satellite. And therefore, when it comes to whether it's being able to identify deforestation or methane leaks in oil and gas industry, well, the data we get from our satellites is going to be absolutely crucial to all of that. So look, Scotland has a lot to offer, a great R&D sector, as Phil had said, that ecosystem, that end-to-end ecosystem, I think is probably our greatest strength.
That's great. So I've seen how international collaboration can be very important in space sector. When I look at International Space Station, that's a great example. And we talked about the strength of the Scottish space sector, where do you see that fits into the international picture, and where are the opportunities for collaboration?
Look, these guys are the evidence of that. You know, Scotland's a nation of immigrants and emigrants. Nick's another great example of one of those people who has contributed here in the UAE, as we've got Scots right across the United Arab Emirates and right across the world who are contributing, telling Scotland's story, but also contributing to the countries that they're living in. And we're also a nation that's welcomed immigrants over the years, because we know immigrants contribute to our society too. And in fact, I'm proof of that when my grandfather came to Scotland in the 1960s. So I think international collaboration is literally within our blood. And for me, the networks that we're able to create, the international networks by, you know, for example, Anna spoke about the work that she's done for many years with Scottish companies. Making those connections, I think, is vital. Where does the government fit into that? That's where our brilliant Global Scots network, again, good work that Nick does for us, a network of Scots in all across the world, actually, but we have them here in Dubai and across the UAE. They can help those Scots and Scottish companies that want entry into the market, give them that support, that scaffolding, that peer-to-peer support. So where the government can help us to facilitate networks like that, provide support through our Scottish Development International colleagues, through our Scottish Enterprise colleagues, through our Scottish Government officials that are based here as well. So the message should go out kind of loud and clear. Scotland is not just open for business, of that we absolutely are, but wherever we need to go in the world, we're prepared to travel to seek those opportunities for Scotland and for the wider world. We don't see ourselves acting in a silo. We see ourselves as part of that collective that is looking to collaborate, not just for the economic opportunity of that there is, but the moral imperative to help to tackle some of the biggest challenges the world faces.
I was recruited by Global Scot to come to Scotland, and I was really amazed at the level of collaboration, the openness, and the speed at which we could actually get to some plans on how we can establish a hub there, and really impressed with the universities and the talent that is available in Scotland. So I'm excited about the opportunities. So we're talking about space, and we talked about data and how important that is. Earth observation data is certainly something that has given us the advantage of understanding the changes that are happening in our climate and on our planet. And that, you know, presents an opportunity for governments to really exploit and use this data to take action, to develop great policies that will help get us to a net zero future. Where do you see those first applications and opportunities reside?
Well, I've given some examples of where I think space and the data we can collect from space is going to be absolutely vital in relation to identifying the scale of the problem and the challenge, and therefore, of course, it's incumbent on governments to act upon that. And I think this is why space is so crucial, because, and I can't believe this is the case, but unfortunately in the world, there are still those who deny that either the climate crisis is happening or indeed the extent of the climate crisis. And I can't fathom that or understand that, given the evidence that we're seeing day in and day out right across the world in terms of the devastation that the climate crisis has caused. But that is why facts and evidence and data are so crucial. And there will always be some, astonishingly, who will try to argue against the facts. But the more and more we can present to the public, this is why we have to do what we're doing. Look at what inaction, look at what the consequences of an inaction are, then I think that's absolutely critical. Because in this, as it was often termed, this post-truth world, I think the facts are going to be incredibly, incredibly important. We cannot progress on climate action without taking the public with us. And that's going to mean some hard choices. Let's be honest. Let's not pretend otherwise. Let's not be dishonest with the public. It is going to involve difficult choices, difficult lifestyle change, but the alternative is far worse. The alternative, of course, is annihilation as a human race. So the opportunity of space is to inform and to help us as the politicians, those in government, to present the independent facts, the facts as they are, that cannot be argued against as hard as many might try. I think that's where the real value is in terms of the collaboration between the space sector and the government.
Thank you, First Minister. What do you say we hear a little bit from our panels? And maybe, Anna, I start with you. We've been talking about collaboration and importance of how space can play a role in net zero. Where do you see those types of collaboration with UAE space program or in UAE in general? And what type of collaboration would help us with a net zero goal?
Thank you for the question. So it's forums like this, which do make a difference for companies like we have on stage. Like Daniel mentioned, the first ever space sustainability strategy was launched at Expo 2020, and we were part of that. I think that, the UAE is open. I think they're extremely set on collaboration and partnerships as part of their space roadmap. I would encourage companies to attend things like the Abu Dhabi Space Debate, the Dubai Air Show, and other forums, because that's when you're meeting with the key stakeholders. So I number one think that if companies are serious about coming to the UAE, being part of the fabric, and building new customer relationships here, they need to be here. So I do recommend those forums. We've seen in our recent project with the International Bilateral Fund through the UK Space Agency that there is an appetite for collaboration. So we've focused our concept for the IBF on Earth observation. So we've built a team with Astra Agency, AzurX, Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, and the Bahrain National Space Agency. And what we've seen through that, we've done a sort of a gap analysis around where the capabilities are in the UK and specifically in Scotland when it comes to Earth observation, and where the gaps and requirements are on this side. So phase 2 is, well, how do we implement on that? How do we, draw in the expertise and the capabilities from the UK? And in particular, Scotland, because Scotland just so happens to have such a strong Earth observation sector. So I'm not just waving the Scottish flag for no reason. I mean, there are compelling evidence of very strong companies on the data side and the Earth observation side in Scotland. So we've seen that this is being a catalyst to that collaboration, these types of funding opportunities where we've got our heads together and been able to draw out these types of partnerships. So touch wood, we're successful in phase 2, and we'll start to see the evolution of what we're calling the EO Lab, which will be basically a central hub that will convene government entities, EO practitioners and experts with the finance sector, with the insurance sector, and with other sectors that really need to understand what Earth observation can do for them in finance or investment or insurance.
Thank you, Anna. So Phil, Earth observation data is near and dear to your heart, and it has been a mean to show us really what's happening, to validate, verify, and give us real insight into our climate change and our transition paths. Can you give us some example based on your experience?
Yes. I mean, I'd say what I'm seeing over DCAT, we've been in business for 7 years now, and it may have started 6 or 7 years ago. People were interested in operational performance improvements of how you monitor assets to do that. And it's shifted in the last 2 to 3 years to really be focused on a lot on the climate issue. So some of the examples that we have, we are, as I say, deeply involved in monitoring agricultural environment, everything from being able to monitor biomass, to monitor crop diversity, and all of these items of data are used in the models that you calculate greenhouse gas emissions and enable you to give numbers on soil carbon. So we can begin to see not only the sustainability, but the recovery of the environment that's so important to us. I think one of the big shifts as well, and it's a message that's coming from COP, is that the monitoring and measuring piece has to change. That which has gone before has not put us in a good position. Reputations are being lost. So the processes, the protocols, the measurement techniques are not fit for purpose. There is now a new set of data that can be applied in a very scalable manner. It takes some techniques to connect that, what is a relative measure, to an absolute measure. It needs the scientists and the engineers to connect that, But once you've solved it once, you have that beautiful ability of being able to use it many, many times. And I'm interested in those problems where we need to take 1 billion measurements. Don't come to me just to make one measurement. These are the dynamic changes that need to occur in society, and these are the services that we can provide. So some of the examples, it's painful when you show people evidence of what's happening. There is belief that behavior is occurring. We now have the technique that can show people that's not happening. People who are driving regenerative agriculture through practices, I can monitor what's happening and say, they've all marked their own homework up to here, and they're all giving themselves an A+. Well, sorry, the majority of them are getting an E. And this is hard. This is really hard. It's hard for policymakers. It's hard for the individuals. The final point on monitoring means that by providing the evidence, and I think the finance industry is pivoting now, it recognizes through the regulations of changing the accounting rules through the task force on climate financial disclosure, the task force on nature-based financial disclosure, they have to create new numbers. And the only way that you can get a lot of them will be from Earth observation data. But that is really driving behavior and will enable new financial products to be created, that there's the balance of the information, both in society where the change is happening, who need to see the rewards, but not only those people who are driving the policies and the large commercial organizations. So it's a very leveling technology, and it's truly revolutionary, I think. It's a real transformation.
Thank you, Phil. I cannot emphasize how important it is what you said, because it is a fragile sort of environment when we talk about, solutions to climate change, and being able to prove that these solutions really work. It's very, very important. So that is, I'm glad you brought those examples up. Alan, you also work with industries, and you use space to bring them intelligence to help them achieve their own net zero goals. Can you give us some example of your work and how you help those industries and why that's important?
Absolutely. I think before I start, maybe give a little bit of context. I was at COP26 in Glasgow, and everybody talked about data and how data was going to help provide governments and decision makers with the tools to allow them to make better interventions, etc. But 90% of the planet doesn't have cellular connectivity. Therefore, there's a lot of the world that operates in a lot of high value industries and high polluting industries that operates in areas of the world where it's very difficult to move data from assets back to the cloud and then into the types of data systems like Phil here, to then interpret that and provide valuable data and insights that allow organizations to make better interventions. So what our company does is essentially enables organizations that have these distributed assets to be able to move data from any sensor, from any location on the planet, back to the cloud using space technology. And what that enables is digital transformation for many of these industries. Absolutely critical in our fight against climate change. Without digital transformation, the ability to include in situ sensor data with Earth observation data and other data sets, bring those together to allow the best set of data and a baseline, which then allows us to make optimal interventions. It's incredibly important. And I'll give some examples just to make that real and put things into context. We work with the aquaculture industry in Scotland, salmon farming. We were asked to help them digitize their site in Shetland about 5 years ago. Up until that point, they were sending somebody every day, 100-mile round trip, to take a water sample, to then take it back to a laboratory, to work out whether the water was clean, there was no biological contaminants, and they had one data point per day. So they couldn't tell what was happening in real time or in near real time. We went in and we provided them with our technology, which linked sensors in the ocean back to the cloud and provided them with near real-time data so that they could then understand what was happening in real time. They don't need to send people now to collect data. And that's a great analogy for a lot of physical assets that are around the world that are sitting potentially polluting. You know, there's a lot of oil and gas assets. There's a lot of, there's a lot of transport networks, infrastructure, which we cannot digitize and therefore cannot get the data back to the cloud and into the systems and then convert that data into insights to help decision makers make the optimal optimization. That's really what we do. And I think that's an incredibly important message for people to take away today is that space data, whether it's Earth observation data, whether it's sensor data that's moved over satellite communication data, it's all available now. The technology's there. What we need to do is make it extremely accessible for these industries, for the organizations that are trying to move towards net zero, but maybe struggling to do. We need to be able to scale that. So I think that's a big challenge for us now the technology is available in Scotland. We have that full end-to-end capability from launching the satellites, the data companies, the satellite communication companies. What we need to do is try and scale that, and that will help us move and accelerate our move towards net zero.
Thank you, Alan. Daniel, you mentioned space sustainability report. So what are some of your thoughts and insights about the report? Why is it important? And maybe about Friends of Space and your work with the Scottish government.
Sure. So it all started with my sister, actually, Anusha, who was giving me a little bit of a hard time about being involved in the space sector and setting up so many space companies. So she's an environmentalist over in Australia. And I was speaking to her and I was trying to explain a little bit like the First Minister said, that we're not getting the word out enough about the good work being done in Scotland. I was trying to tell her and reassure her, that no, I'm a good person, So we ended up, we pulled a group together, my colleague and I from the University of Edinburgh, the head of space, Christina Tamina. We pulled together a working group in Space Scotland and we called it the Environmental Task Force. And we engaged immediately with Friends of the Earth, the environmental group and other environmental groups too, because I realized early on that we really need to befriend our biggest critics. And I thought if I could persuade them, then I could persuade anybody, maybe even my sister, right? So from there, we started to work on something called the Sustainable Space Challenges, where we asked anybody who has an environmental challenge that they think space might be able to solve to submit it to our sector. We all came together with 3 different working groups, 3 different workshops to work on the challenges that came in from schools, from government, from businesses, from universities and wider. And what came out of that whole process really was there was a summit where we showcased the results. We had the European Space Agency Director General and Scottish Government there as well. And what we realized was there was a call for an environmental strategy for space because it hadn't ever been done before. So around that time, we were actually finalising the Scottish Space Strategy, and we brought it out here in 2021. We put a pillar in there focused on sustainability. And within 1 year, we had launched a sustainability roadmap. And we didn't call it a sustainability strategy because it was very important to us not to just create another strategy, another action plan, another charter. It has to be about action. It couldn't just be more words. So the very unique thing about the roadmap is that it's 14 different work packages that the Environmental Task Force are working on today, and they've already completed some of those. And each one is focused on results, tangible outcomes, because that's how we know we can distinguish ourselves. And it's because it's the right thing to do, but it also gives Scotland a bit of a distinguishing factor in the international stage to show that we really can lead by example when it comes to space. So it's had a lot of international recognition.
That's great. And now you and your sister are on good terms?
Yeah, she's forgiven me now. Yeah.
Okay, good. Any question from our audience for our panel? Yes, we answered all their questions. I have a question. Oh, here you go.
Give us some examples of something space companies either manufacturing doing in practice around sustainability.
Sure, definitely. So some examples of what space companies are doing across Scotland. And it's really what gave us the confidence to go ahead and produce the roadmap is we knew we could see this was all happening, but it wasn't being packaged in any way, and there wasn't that knowledge sharing happening. So I mentioned some examples earlier, the upstream rocket manufacturers, the launch vehicle firms that are all working on sustainable fuels. and greener fuels. Spaceports are looking at their environmental impact assessment, looking at how can they drive down emissions. And the roadmap specifically goes as broad as it possibly can, because we are a small country, a small ecosystem. So we got very ambitious. And we even look at things like what is the impact of the data that's being crunched in the data centers? What is the impact of people driving to watch the first launch from Scotland, which we hope to see next year, of course. So as broad as possible, supply chains, looking at supply chains. Another thing is satellite companies. They're looking at the materials they use to build their satellites and the impact when they burn up coming back into orbit. What is the impact of that? Because we all assume, okay, that's it. It's not in orbit anymore. It's not causing any debris. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to cause an environmental hazard of some kind. So then, of course, there's the downstream side, which my colleagues on stage can go into the ways that Earth observation data can support with monitoring soil moisture to prevent landslides or illegal fishing, illegal people trafficking, illegal mining, all kinds of incredible ways that for me are far more inspirational than watching a rocket launch. And I can say that having started a launch company, set up a launch company, it's the things you can do with space data that are limited only by your imagination. And that's the most exciting thing I think about the sector.
Thank you. Maybe one last question, anyone on the panel, or all of you, if you want to comment. We're here in UAE, you all are Scottish space enterprises. And what are the synergies you see between your work in Scotland and here in UAE?
Well, I can comment. We have investment from AzureX, from Anna. So we're already exploring this region. I think it's very synergy, small population, very high value industries, great opportunities for us. We're looking at a number of challenges that exist within the UAE, and water being a big challenge, water resource scarcity. We're working with a UN organization at the moment to help digitize water basins. And certainly the technology that we're developing is applicable globally, but there's a big opportunity here in the UAE to apply some of the technologies. So I think there's opportunities for Scottish companies, the expertise that we have to export that into regions, not only the UAE, but other parts of the world. Our technology specifically is already being applied in the US, Australia, and I think it's because we have that full end-to-end capability, and we can apply these technologies in some of the biggest challenges that the world has at the moment. We can certainly tackle some of the challenges that specific regions have specifically in the UAE. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. There's also a lot of opportunity for collaboration, of which we're already doing.
If I can kind of twist that back to a Scottish angle here, I think it's just an insight, a personal insight. I think in Scotland, we are blessed with two incredible industries, the space industry, design, build, launch, operate, and the data side. And I think what I'm hearing again from COP is this pivot that the finance industry is taking, how the allocation of capital needs to shift in a different way. And I've given my words on that, but Scotland has a finance industry that's large enough to be globally influential, but small enough to be really innovative. And what I'm seeing is that is happening, and it's happening really quickly. It's being connected, and that gives it a really tight innovation loop, which is a really exciting thing. There's the potential here to be really punching above our weight. And in terms of the UAE's capability in the finance stage as well, I think those synergies really draw across. It's a really important point to make.
Thank you. So with that, First Minister, you get the last word. With everything you heard, all your excitement about the space sector in Scotland, how do you want this group to walk away from the conversation, feeling about the work of Scotland and these amazing companies in getting us to net zero?
Well, look, first of all, can I thank you for expertly moderating, because we're on time, which is always a difficulty. Thank you to the panel for contributing as well, not just at this panel, but in terms of the work that you do. So I think there's a few takeaways. One is for those who believe in the sector, invest in the sector, working in the sector, I think there's a collaborative effort on all of us to have to evangelize even more. Now, you guys do it regularly. I think from a government perspective, we've got a bit of a takeaway. What more can we do to tell the story of why space is absolutely crucial for lots of different reasons, but particularly in tackling the biggest existential threat we all face, the climate crisis. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, from a government perspective, what more can we do? Of course, invest, and the colleagues here will constantly and regularly remind me of that, and that's right, because we should, particularly I think when it comes to sharing the risk, I think government has a role to play in helping to de-risk some of the more innovative, newer technologies, and we're up for that. We're game for that. We're prepared to be a partner in de-risking. And then there's a collaboration piece, which again Phil I think spoke about particularly well. Scotland is small enough that we can often take that Team Scotland approach. We can bring the right people around the table pretty quickly, pretty easily. We all either know each other, sometimes we're actually related to each other, which is interesting. But we are small enough that we can bring the universities, industry, government, and civil society and community together very, very, very quickly. So collaboration, I think, is absolutely key. So I think those are the main takeaways for me. And I want to thank again, Anusha, you for moderating, but also the panel for your excellent contributions and for telling the story. And as Anna put it, for waving the flag for Scotland. Even if you don't have a reason to do it, you should do it anyway. But particularly good that you have a reason, I think, to do it on behalf of Scotland. So thank you, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you. And it was an honor and pleasure to, hear all of your thoughts and insights about space. And I'm grateful for your participation. Thank you, First Minister.